Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of The Fellas. This week, we're talking about the Canadian Grand Prix. Pretty interesting race, but we're going to kick it off with the qualifying because that sets the stage for what took place in the race. So, Ray, your thoughts on qualifying?
Well, and Mercedes came out of nowhere, right, and upset the whole package because Max threw down what he thought was going to be a killer lap because he outdid Piastri, and George came out of the blue and said, "Look at this," and so they found pace at this track for sure,
Right.
So that was a surprise for me out of qualifying.
Right. Simon?
Yeah, I think the same thing. I think, Ray, you hit the nail on the head there. I don't know where Mercedes got the pace from. They just came in and took house, right? Even Antonelli had a great qualifying. I think Ferrari did okay. I think Leclerc had a little issue on his last lap for qualifying on Q3. But, Russell just came in and took it over, told everybody who was the champion for the week during qualifying, right? So I thought that was interesting. Love to see what they're going to do in the next race, right, which is Austria. But I think Mercedes really earned and set the stage for this race and their championship points.
Yeah. Like the both of you, I was pleasantly surprised to see that. To see George drop that lap time and took pole. So, and then leading into the race, my thought was, okay, well, let's see if he can convert that. What he can convert that into. Is it a win or what's going to happen? So that leads us right into the race. I mean, the start was clean, very clean, but I was surprised. George got an excellent start and held that pole position going into the first turn. And to me, it looked like Max, being that he has, all those points on his super license, he just settled right on into second. And he wasn't really challenged anyway, but he settled right on in. But having said that, I'll throw it to Simon. Simon, your thoughts on the start?
Well, the whole weekend, the media was trying to amp up everybody about the issue Russell and Verstappen had last week and, what's going to happen in the first turn. I thought it was interesting. I really didn't think about it until the media was really, especially F1 Sports, was really pushing the envelope on what's going to happen with Verstappen and Russell at the first corner. And Russell had a great reaction time when he started off. So I knew right then and then he was confident. I saw him interviewing before the race, and he looked so calm and confident, like he had the race kind of sewed up. So I'm happy for him. I think before we get into the mid-season, because of this race and because of some other things, he's going to have his contract pretty much renewed. He's probably negotiating that right now as we speak and say, hey. But Antonelli as well was able to get around Piastri, and really show that Mercedes had pace. So, Verstappen, his reaction time wasn't as good, but you don't know if he was just taking it easy or if he was just, nervous or what, because he has all those points.
Right. Well, true. I'll let Ray go before I say anything. Go ahead, Ray.
Well, so I just thought I thought Max played it smart because I want to think that Oscar was trying to come up on his side, right? But I think he throttled back to give Antonelli a chance to come up beside Oscar, right, to start competing for that position, right? Awesome. So that's my take on it. That he may have just eased up off the throttle a little bit just to back people up a little bit, so that that competition could happen behind him. And then that it happened that the corners worked out for Antonelli more than it worked out for Oscar, because Oscar, my opinion, Oscar is thinking the long game, right? Because his number one rival is his teammate, and number two is Max, right? So I think Oscar was thinking, all right, I just need to get through this so that then we can, put a strategy in driving, I can go attack. But I think Max on the start kind of played coy with how he went to throttle to kind of have that fight going on back there. And it worked out in his favor because, Piastri had to settle behind Antonelli.
Yeah.
So real quick, Ralph, just a real quick question. So you're saying the game within the game, Ray? Is that what you're saying that Verstappen was doing?
Oh, yes. Yeah, of course. Everybody's thinking. Dude, if you can do 200 miles an hour and then read what's on the checkerboard or going across the thing over there, come on, you have more than enough capacity to handle a start like that. Because Max was thinking that he could, worst case, he's going to try and run down George, right, and see what happens, right? But, but still, his competitors, Piastri and stuff is behind him, right? So in some ways, in my head, I think Max was hoping that Antonelli would stay around to, give him, some gap to Oscar as far as points.
I agree with that. And the F1 is a game within a game with a lot of these guys, with the world champions when they're up at the top or the tip of the spear, because I could see that. Yeah. Ease up a little so that he falls into the clutch, of Antonelli and let them battle it out. Once they're battling it out, he can ease up and then go up ahead to try to catch up to see if he could catch up to George in front. So I could see that as a possibility. We'd have to see the race telemetry to really know if he did that, but I think it is possible. I think it is possible. And I agree. I mean, Max, for two reasons. I think he's playing the long game because he can't get himself into any trouble right now and then suffer a race ban. And we'll get into what the ramifications of that later on when we talk about not securing points. And I think, Antonelli going after Piastri. I think Oscar, I won't say let it go, but I think Oscar settled in as well and was like, you know what? All right, I'm gonna run my race from here. I'm gonna cover. He didn't once again, he did not see, doesn't seem to be somebody that lets his emotions take over him. He can control his emotions, and he settled in. And I think he settled in really nice. But yeah, okay.
Game within the game. All right.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's what I saw looking at it from there. I mean, I wouldn't compare this race to Monaco. It wasn't, but everyone for the most part settled in for the most.
Because from when I looked at it, right, there was a turn to the left where Oscar got in front of Antonelli, right? His car edged out in front of him, but all of a sudden Max was there, in front of Oscar. So, come on. You just ease out the throttle a little bit, sit there. It gave Antonelli time to come back up on the inside with him, right? And, Oscar didn't want to be all gung-ho and risk it by trying to go around on the outside. So I think he just played the long game and said, okay, I'll settle in and let the race unfold and see where we end up from there. Right. But I think Max, purposely drove them back into each other so that they could have a battle.
Yeah, because, I guess not saying you want anyone to get hurt.
No. I'm not saying that. It's a strategy.
Right, just strategy. But one strategy is like, yes, let them battle each other and they do that. But you never know going into that corner off the start. Excuse me. I've actually been to the race sitting in the grandstands that is right in front of that. So when you come in there, it's always an area for action. If you're coming in too hot, then you have to overshoot or whatever. So it's a potential area for coming together, So I could see.
I see the logic. Yeah. I see the logic. I see that instead of positioning your car to where you're being very aggressive to try and take Russell, you leave your car in a position where now Piastri has to defend Antonelli, or Antonelli can get an edge on Piastri because I haven't shifted over to the left or to the right. And I can see what you're saying in that sense. That makes sense.
Right, because Max isn't racing against Antonelli.
Okay.
He's racing Piastri.
So that's why I think that makes sense, because I just know from a competitive standpoint, you're not letting off the gas. You're just not putting your car in a position to let Piastri take advantage of the situation, but you can leave the car in a position where Antonelli can take advantage of where you are at that turn.
Correct. Yeah. And that's what I could see him doing that.
Yeah. Because from Max, the further down the line that his major competitor is, which is Piastri and then Lando, the further behind him, it's the better off for him, right? Because then he covers more points. So that's kind of, that was my, I don't know, it jumped out at me when I was watching it that, and Max was kind of a little coy there in the start.
Right. I agree. So, I mean, for me, it was the start, and then the middle was okay. There was some other stuff that happened, but I didn't end up screaming at my TV until down to lap 67.
But before we could go there, though, I'd like to just say one thing, right? So tires came away from the race to be key, right? Right. That's what we learned, because the guys who in the top 6 all started on hards, right?
No, all started on mediums.
I mean, sorry, yes, mediums, right? And we saw through the race that the mediums, they were graining relatively quickly, so they weren't the ones to do. And and they jumps to the hard tires after, which was the better tire.
Right.
And for those participants that didn't follow that strategy, they kind of got hung out to dry, in my opinion. Right.
The lead person that got hung out with that was Alex Albon at Williams, because he apparently wanted to dump them when everybody else was dumping them.
Right.
I think that the train started in on lap 13, 14, and then by like 17, I think most of them had already dumped them off and switched on to hards, and he was still running out there on mediums and then getting killed because the tire fell off.
Yeah,
like it was done. It had a short life compared to the hard. So his race, you could basically say, was then killed because of bad strategy by the team.
So I wanted to also say to you, so I think Charles, right, did the opposite thing also. Didn't he come out on hards and then had to go to mediums? Because Lewis came in, pitted, went out, and I was kind of, I will say this, I was kind of elated that, we already started and saying he was going to push forward, but all of a sudden, I found out from, at the end of the race that one of the commentators said that, which I didn't see on the live feed, that he hit the groundhog that damaged his floor, that caused his progress, because he fell off pretty dramatically, right?
Precipitously.
Yeah. And Charles was pissed off with the pit wall, with the information that was coming back and forth to him regarding stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if he was pissed. I think he was more or less, we had plan A, plan B, and plan C. Right now, I'm in a good position, and because he was in first for a while, he had a couple of laps there. I want to say at least 8 laps where he was in first, and in his mind, his tires weren't degrading. But what is true, he can't see all the other telemetry of the other cars, so he's just so focused on his race that, why are you bringing me in so early? His tires are still pretty good, but everybody's catching up to him.
Right.
And what they didn't want is what happened to Lewis, when he got stuck behind 4 or 5 cars, and there he lost 10 seconds on those 10 laps that he was stuck behind. He lost a second a lap. So his race was done just because he came into traffic.
Yep.
And the groundhog.
And the groundhog that we didn't see. but what was there. Yeah, it's true. The tires, I remember Charles had a radio transmission where he said the mediums were fine for him. Like he did say that, like he felt he could extract, the maximum out of the mediums, whereas everyone else were like, let's get rid of these things.
Yeah, because I think Charles was going, they may have a talk that they were going to try and do like a 2-stop strategy, right? And I think what pissed off Charles is that he said, what about C? And then still called him in, right? And they just kind of like ignored what he says. And Simon, I'm kind of skeptical, yes, because of the team they're with, that they really took the overall picture in hand, because, their performance have not been up to snuff lately anyway. So, Shaw, I don't know. I didn't trust what they were doing, to tell you, the pit wall.
So,
what I'm saying? But yeah, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to respond to that, if you don't mind. I didn't know if you
go for it, man.
But they're at that point as professionals where you got to give them benefit of the doubt, in my mind, race to race, right? Yeah, they've screwed up. They've made some questionable choices where they're trying to think on the fly and get things done. As compared to other teams, they're probably a B or B minus compared to Red Bull and some others, right? But that B is still pretty strong, and you still have the information right in front of you, and he's only seeing the car behind him and the car in front of him, right? So you kind of have to, he wants to go to plan C because of what his perspective and what his vantage point is. But if they're seeing the entire race, and if your times compared to everybody else, because he doesn't see that.
Yeah, true. But the race engineer, usually after listening in on a couple of the radio communications, right, while they're driving, the race engineer will give them, gaps, gap speed to let them know that you are doing this much in comparison to this guy, that much in comparison to this guy. So I think it could, they still could have communicated that to him if they weren't. I wasn't listening on the radio, right, before making the call. But
I think what you're seeing, I guess, is it comes down to the confidence, right? When they say building that relationship with your race engineer and the driver, what we're starting to see, or we're seeing with Ferrari and have been seeing even when Carlos was there, is that there doesn't seem to be that confidence that the driver has in the race engineer or all the info that's coming from the pit wall. Or maybe what was discussed prior to the race is now shifting, and the drivers are like, why? You know what I'm saying? Kind of thing. So that's what I kind of get from it, from watching it all these years, is that when you have a driver and a race engineer that they gel, there's that confidence, that trust, you seem to have less of those incidents. But Ferrari seems to have more. Well, from what we've seen.
Yeah. I don't debate that. I think you're right. I'm also thinking they have to go off probability, right? So what's the probability of plan A working? What's the probability of plan B working? What's the probability of plan C working, right? And then all of that shifts from the start. If somebody gets ahead of you, or the team that you're racing against gets behind you, those plan A's and plans B start to morph and evolve, right? But the probability is still there. Right. So he's probably thinking, hey, well, why are we not doing plan C based on what I'm seeing? Right. And he doesn't know what's transpired with Lewis. I doubt he even knows what's going on with Lewis, right? And then what's happening with the teams that he's racing against, just based off the first turn on lap one, your whole plan can go out the window.
Oh, true that. But that's why I go back to, I agree. But that's why I go back to it. It seems to me one of the components is this confidence and trust. I think they still need to work on that, the trust, right? To know that the team has made a call. I've heard it over the years, various drivers that have won Grand Prix, where you might have gotten that back and forth between the driver and the pit wall, and then the driver follows what the pit wall says and ends up winning. And you'll hear them say, like, yeah, that I got to thank the team. You have more of that where the driver or one side will just back off, like using Albon. He must have said something like, hey, guys, let's do this. But they didn't listen to him. So they didn't read it. So I just think it's confidence. But I agree. I agree with it. But Ferrari, hey, they've been the Tifosi been getting at them. The two major Italian newspapers had scathing articles that they're saying they should get rid of Freddie Vasseur. And why did they bring Lewis Hamilton into the team? Because he's really adding no value. Words to that effect, right? And they're even going after Charles, but we already know that Tifosi don't play. They want results. And if you're not giving it,
well, what do you guys consider, Ray and Ralph, success for Ferrari this year?
So they need to have more podiums. They need to have more podiums, and Lewis needs to be on the podiums more. From a high level, that's what I think the Tifosi is looking for, right?
Okay.
So that's kind of what's hanging over Lewis's head, is that he's not on the podium, more frequently than he's been there in the past, right? And they are ultimately looking for both cars being on the podium. Yes, they want to win it, and I don't think that's this year, right? But no. I think they want to see the drivers up in the podium, arena more often than not. That's my take.
Yeah.
What do you think where do you think the Ferrari's successes this year, Rob? What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, come on, based on the car, I think Ferrari's car, they should be able to be finishing strong 4th and 5th, whichever driver it is, and maybe, able to capitalize on maybe catching a 3rd here and there, right? And because it's building, and as far as Lewis, hey, I was there too. We expect he's going to come out there and just pick this car up and go. We know it's more than that. So I think if they were consistently finishing like 4th and 5th, whichever driver, and then a challenging for a 3rd here and there, and if they could even get a 2nd, I think that's successful for them. But they're up against stiff competition because the McLaren is hot. The Red Bull is no slouch, right? Either. So, and then the Mercedes, right?
Right. So to me, success for Ferrari should be at this stage in the year. It may change when we get 3 quarters in, but right now is winning 2nd place for the constructors. To me, that is success, because now getting that extra money, getting that extra what you gonna call it, a bonus for next season when you have a new car, a new generation, having all of that and getting prepared for next year, to me, is success. They're not beating McLaren.
You no say. I don't know.
McLaren right now is it. They can beat Verstappen.
Yeah, they need to be fighting with that.
And they can beat Mercedes.
Yeah, they need to be fighting there. Yeah,
they should be going for 2nd in the constructors. Get all the money they can. Get all that opportunity they can for next year, to make sure that car next year is top notch. And whoever they need to hire from an engineering standpoint. And
but they're not gonna. But they won't see that this year. I the way I'm looking at it, I don't listen. Red Bull, forget it. They're not players in the constructors because Yuki, that 2nd car is cursed. Let's just say it that way, or whatever. So they only have 1 car really running for points. So they're out. They're going to be maybe 4th, right? I don't see Ferrari beating Mercedes.
They were ahead of Mercedes last week.
No, meaning in the constructors.
Yeah, they were ahead of Mercedes last week.
They were, but I think Kimi's fired up. I hear you. That should be where they're going for.
Right. I'm not saying it's going to be easy.
No,
but
right.
That should be success for
Ferrari. Yes. I agree.
That should be the goal.
I agree. Right. I agree. I just
No, I just wanted to interject with the Mercedes stuff, right? Because we still don't know if this is a fluke or if there is really a change in the car that's going to be able to prove itself during the subsequent races, right? So Mercedes is still a checker mark, but yes, they've always, even since the season has started, they've been hanging around in case the top 3 mess up, that they're there to grab it up. And I think, I agree with, I think they need to be in that realm where they're competing with Mercedes, so that they can go back and forth. I don't know if they have the ability to take the car there now, right? Because they're still trying to figure out what's going on in the car. Even the clerk said the back is too loose. Right, they can't get on the throttle when they need to get on it. They don't feel confidence in the back. So unless they can find out what's really doing, bring a package that they can, help with, I don't know if it's going to happen. But I think the Tifosi would settle for them being there, battling with Mercedes, and seeing what comes up if the other guys have an off night.
Well, I'll say this. Okay, Mercedes and Ferrari have a car each that you could say are pretty consistent up in the points. I mean, because George Russell has 136 points. Charles has 104, right? Mm-hmm. Fine. Lewis has 79 points to Charles, so he needs to step up, right? Charles needs to keep going and push, but Lewis needs to step up. And then Kimi Antonelli has 63 points, right? He also needs to step up. So each team has a car that seems to be at, maximizing, right? So they need the 2nd car to do it. So it's up to Lewis and Kimi, and I think Kimi having this 3rd place right here, I think he's He's had some promising attempts. If he can keep consistent, he'll get it. Lewis, we know, still is trying to feel his way with the car. So I don't know. It's possible, but yes, I agree. That would be success if they finish second.
It's a long season, man, and this is Kimi's first year. So I'm sorry, I'm not doubting his driving skills. I'm just doubting his experience level to complete a full year strong. And he has the skill to do that.
Right.
But I know Charles has it, and I know Lewis has it. They know exactly how to pace themselves. I know what's at risk, and they know, what risks they're going to take on track. And I don't know if Kimi Antonelli is there yet. I don't know if he has that experience yet to be able to say, you know what, I'm not going after that pass at this point. So if Ferrari closes out the year in second in championship points, I think Travosi should be happy with that. Yeah, we'd love to see him on podiums. We'd love to see him win.
Right. And look at this, because Kimi has 63 points because of his DNF. Right? Mm-hmm.
So Lewis and Charles had a DNF.
DNF, right. So if they can
if they didn't have the DNF, remember they were like second, third, and fourth.
Fourth, right.
In that race, and they had a DNF.
Right. So
that killed him.
Right, and that killed him. Right. So we know that. So if they can keep it together for the rest of the year, that would be the battle. That would be the battle. We know Max is battling Oscar and Lando, and then the battle would be Ferrari battling Mercedes to claim second place. But yeah, that would be success. Yeah, I agree. Okay. All right. Having said that, so moving into where the race really had a turning point, the Mercedes surprise.
No,
no.
The Battle of McLarens.
The Battle of McLaren. The Battle of McLaren. Whoa.
Which I thought this, if I could just take this right here, I thought it was great. That was a half of a lap, or was it a full lap that they were racing, maybe? Yep. But I was at the edge of my seat, right? Yep. Because they were racing so clean until Lando made a mistake, right? But I was enjoying it. I got off the edge of my seat. I was like, yes, some racing. I mean, that's all fans really want to see is racing. Yep. At the end of the day, it could be, 16 and 15. You prefer it to be 1 and 2, but 15 and 16 in the back racing and going back and forth, it really pumps up your adrenaline. So to see two teammates going at it and racing really clean, I was impressed until Lando made a mistake.
Yeah, me too. I was watching it. I too was jumping out of my seat screaming when I saw it, but I don't know why Lando tried to go up the outside, because you had to put 2 wheels on the grass, and then he came in to run into the back of his teammate. That one, I was like, you weren't going to make it there. So that was just a clear mistake. But yeah, it was exciting, but I felt bad for him. But I was like,
yeah, well, it's the heat of the moment, right? Because he was trying to fake out Oscar by showing up in his mirrors right up when he was about to brake, to see if Oscar would forget his braking point and then focus on him and go off. And that wasn't working. But they did do that nice turn out of that hairpin to execute that pass, where they went wheel to wheel, and then Oscar outbraked him. And then I think it's just a spur of the moment, right? Because at that point, the track breaks to the right, right? And so he figured that, Oscar, I'm supposing, that Oscar is going to go to the right because the track's going, instead of going to the left, he's going to go back to the right to prepare to do that turn, right, for the left. And that being said, and also just having the fact that, he had a good toe behind him, he was right when he said it was his mistake, right? It wasn't Oscar's mistake. It was his mistake, because he was figuring out that, for the past couple of laps, that Oscar at certain points would be moving over to open up the corner so he can make it, right? And he figured then once, moved over, and that, probably was a point, I'm supposing, because Lando didn't call me, but I'm just supposing from my seat. So just put it in perspective. And, and I think that, when he went in there, it was like, too close. It was a split second, and it was like, yo, I messed up, and he couldn't really. I don't even know if he had time to hit the brake, or how much of the brake he did hit, right? But it ran out because it took me back to people said it was with Hamilton and Button, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and it took me back to Rosberg and Hamilton back in that was out in Spain, right? Where they went the grass thing and they came around and took out 2 cars and everything was over.
Yeah.
So I think Oscar walked away lucky that that it wasn't any major damage on his side, and as I commented on,
I think he had a puncture. There was no reason for him to change the tires. They changed the tires.
They just wanted to be safe.
Yeah,
they wanted to be safe because he came around pretty quickly, right? So it's because usually if you had a puncture, he'd have been straggling behind, but he came around pretty quickly when they cut to the thing. Hoping that it was real play at real time and not something else. But so but it's just he made a mistake, and again it's back to pressure, right? Because again, we could take that same thing that could have happened to Oscar on the first go with Antonelli. He could have went for that dive, and then boom, they buckle up right there in the corner, right? But he did the long game where Lando was like, "Hey, I'm on him. I want to go by him," and stuff like that. So, and I think he did the right thing. He took it on the chin and said, "Hey, that was my mistake," and that's it. So that was, it's sad, but it's
To me, it's showing yet another crack in Lando's armor, right? So before we even go to that, and it also shows how impervious Oscar's is. Because what you just said is true. He was under pressure from Antonelli, right? At the start, gathered himself up, didn't go, let the emotion go, gathered himself up and went with that, right? Lando was pressuring him, and he just remained cool and calm and ran his race. And then what happened? That Lando, who's pressuring him, lost it, cracking his armor and threw it away again. So that's why I say Lando has to get his head right. He has to get on top of all of that, because he just threw away all those points. And I know it's in the moment. It's easy to say armchair quarterbacking it, or armchair driving it kind of thing. I know, but I'm just saying at that level, that's when you see the difference, where these guys are able to get control of themselves, to settle back in and then be more strategic. So I think it really makes Lando look bad. That's all I'm saying.
I think there's some truth there, Ralph. I can't disagree with you. However, I did like the move that he put on Piastri.
Which one?
The first one.
Oh, okay. All right. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love that move. I love the fact that he was going to go after Ray. He got skills.
Yes, he does.
Where I think there's some truth to what you're saying is there were 2 over-the-radio comments that kind of bothered me, right? Where they're instructing him, make sure you hit your brake spots, make sure you do this. And that's kind of telling. That's kind of telling that he's not always focused, right? And maybe that's his issue, that he might have to be angry to be focused, or he might have to hate you to be focused. Some people need some sort of motivation to stay focused 100% of the time. But if they don't have that motivation, it's 90%,
right,
or it's 80%,
right.
And I think that's Lando. I think when he's hot or when he's in a rhythm, he doesn't have to be focused, because when he's out in the lead, he just wins the race. You notice that he's just cool and collect.
Right.
But I think he has I think there's some truth to what you said there.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's what's telling, right? It's fine if you're out in the lead and you're not under pressure, then you can settle in and run it your way. But when you're in the mix with with the other cars or your competitor, right there, that's what kind of shows your mettle, and yes, he made a great pass, but then you got to know when to back out. And they've all had it. I'm not dogging Lando.
No.
What I'm saying is, he needs to, at the end of this season, over the off season, he needs to get into something that's going to help him with that focus, because he has the skills. He has it, but he has to gain control of that impulsiveness, or that, where he can't gather up his emotions and then just be surgical about it. That's all. That's all.
Well, I said that because, but after you just when Piastri took it back from him, right? I think he had focus because he could have turned in to the turn, but it's as if he knew he left space with Piastri, and it's as if he knew that Piastri was going to try and late break him, which he did. So he couldn't have wrapped it up. So I don't know. I'm giving Lando a break. Yes.
Yeah.
I think sometimes he might get overzealous on a situation, and then what you call it there, and that might get the better of him. I think that's what kind of happened because he was still focused there. Because when I looked at the thing, Piastri did like a Max Verstappen type of stuff with the the outbreaking dive bomb stuff because Lando was in front on the outside. And all of a sudden he came in and just right down there. And, he fell in behind. So that might have gotten under Lando's skin a little bit, I want to think. And he's like, all right, you drop this because I made a move on you, made one back. I want to slap you by making one back on you again. And that's probably where things that's where it went.
But the commentator said that Piastri was on the racing line in that case too. Even though he broke late, it was his line to break late, right? And when you're on the outside trying to go in, you don't really have a say if a car is right on your say. So
what I'm saying, but not to interrupt you, but to go to your point about emotional, right? He could have ignored it and went in. You see what I'm saying? But he stayed out. So I just think it was I think what I said last was where it was that he wanted to slap him back by I made a move on you. You move back. All right, I'm going to slap you with another one back on you, and that's where he went.
And that threw his race away.
Yeah,
in essence, and that's what I'm getting at. Because when I saw it from the in car, from Lando's car, I'm like, yo, you don't have enough tarmac. So how are you pushing up there? He's not giving you room there. He doesn't have to.
I don't think he was trying to pass. I think he was just trying to get in position for the next turn because he hit him, right? So it's almost like if Piastri took his foot off the brake, he misjudged how close he was to Oscar.
Right, because
Piastri's there was no room to pass. Right, there was absolutely no room to pass.
Right, Piastri was taking his corner the way he was. He wasn't worried about him.
Well, Piastri was stopping him because from the so remember now, if Piastri had to jog back over to open up the corner to carry speed, right? Because the cars can't do a right angle turn, right? So I think he was either Lando misjudged the point at which Piastri would have to jog over before him to come up on the inside, or Piastri's like, all right, I'm going to sit out here for a little bit and see what happens, right? Because he was still in front, so he still commanded because he could be a strategy is that I'm going to wait to the point where I know that when I jog over, there's no way he can come up beside me and make that corner. You know what I'm saying?
I got you. So this is where it is then, in a sense. Oscar Piastri is what came out of this is that Lando will never try something like that again, right? Because he knows Oscar is
on Oscar.
That's what I'm talking, right? He won't try that on Oscar again because he knows Oscar isn't rattled by it, and he will defend it, right? The way he is, and he wasn't aggressive. So that again is the mark of a future world champion.
Oh, Oscar's champion this year.
No, I know. Yeah. But it goes back to when I go back to Lando in his headspace, because Oscar's running his head games, right? He's running it against Max, right? Because Max knows Oscar is not Lando.
Yep.
Right? So Max will show him more respect, right? When he's trying to do things because Oscar demanded it. Yeah. And that's all I'm saying. At the end, just to sum it up, is that I just feel Lando he's a very good driver. He just needs to get his head locked tight. That just like how his teammate has and his friend Max has. They have theirs locked. They're not running out of there. Because I think, I think George has it too.
Has what?
I think George Russell. I think George has it. His head locked.
Oh, yes.
His headlock. Yeah. Right? Lando, that's the only kink in Lando's armor. If he can fix that for the remainder of the season and into next season, he'll be fine. That's all.
I mean, if I was to take Lando or Russell in a race from a skill standpoint, I'm taking Lando.
Yeah.
Right. I think Russell is consistent. I think same thing Piastri. When you're consistent, you look great.
Yeah.
You look great. But it's just a sign of a champion when you can be consistent all the time. You might not have the skill like Lando or skill like Lewis or the skill, but Verstappen kind of has both, but we won't talk about that. But yeah, I mean,
right. No, you're right. Right. It's being able to function under pressure. That's where you're tested, you know, and Lando's been failing there. And that's where he needs to work on. That's all I'm saying. Enough respect to him. So, you know, saying that, I mean, hats off to George and Mercedes for that win. Hats off to George and Mercedes for that win. Your thoughts? We'll go with you, Simon.
Yeah, I think we've exhausted most of that, but Mercedes really did their job today, and they got themselves back into points. They got themselves some really good points this weekend. I'm just dying to see what happens next weekend because every race,
me too,
it's different.
Ray,
well, George was like a champion, but I remember in his post-race interview with Rosberg, right? Rosberg tried to push him and say, "Hey, so Mercedes back?" Well, you know, and George says, "Well, I don't think so. This one, you know, kind of suited us, and we'll see what, you know, goes on next time." So I don't think that George has confidence that the car is completely there.
Right.
For them to show up is just that this track and his efforts fell in place for them to finish where they finished. Right.
Yeah. It's almost like, this track suited their car on that day, and it did not suit McLaren as much as some of the other tracks on the same day.
Right.
That's how it seems. So, but just to close that out, I'll say, you know, I give it to Max too. He's playing the long game. I mean, we know he has that pressure on the super license, but he just settled in. He's going for points.
Yeah, he wants to be a champion again.
Yes. He's running for points. So moving on into the ending results. I mean, we're clear. We know who the top three are already, but it was cool one to see, you know, Charles and Lewis there in the points, but Nico Hülkenberg and Esteban Ocon and Carlos Sainz. It was nice to see those guys in there, especially Nico Hülkenberg. I mean, he's been there for a while.
Yeah, and I think Alonso got some points today too, didn't he?
Yes. Alonso, Fernando finished 7th.
Yep. So that was good for him. Get some more points. 2 races in a row, he got points. Don't let him pass his teammate there. So
okay, just to say, you know, last first, the comment from last first to be racing in F1 in the first place, they gotta have that ego, that arrogance to think I should be ahead of you. So they're gonna take those risks and drive the limit human possibility. I agree with that, but I'm just saying what you've seen when the world champions, once they've settled down and gone through all of that, they're able to control that arrogance at times, so they don't let their egos get away with them and push. There have been times, like I said, Lewis has had it, Max has had it. I've seen other drivers that have had it, but that's all we're saying.
What's the predictions for next week, guys?
Predictions. Again,
it's 2 weeks now. Is it 2 weeks? It's not next week. It's 2 weeks.
No, it's not next week because they're coming back across the pond.
Yeah.
So they're coming up on Austria, right?
Mm-hmm.
June
Austria,
27th. Yeah, June 27th.
Well, we were completely wrong last week.
Yes, we were.
We didn't have Mercedes even in the conversation.
We didn't have them anywhere, you know, and they came out, you know. But
I think McLaren is going to come back strong.
Of course,
of course.
Yeah.
I don't know where Max is going to be. I'm going to put in the universe that Ferrari is going to beat Mercedes in points next week. And that's my prediction. I don't really have a prediction on who's going to win the race between Oscar, Lando, and Verstappen, because those three are always going to be up in the podiums, in my opinion. But I think it's Verstappen's home race, so he should have the probability of winning and the upper hand of winning that race because he's probably raced that track millions of times.
Yeah. He's gonna come. He's coming for blood. Not that he hasn't been in other races, but he's coming for blood on that. The Dutch turnout is huge, you know, for him as well. My prediction, I would say, I think it's going to still be I'm gonna say it. It's gonna be Oscar, Lando, Max. Right?
Well, Max is going to be in home country
Mm-hmm.
when he goes to that race.
Mm-hmm.
And just like, the fans can do wonders for a driver, just like they uplifted Lewis back at Silverstone last year. I think Max is going to put a stamp on it. So I'm going to say it's going to be Max.
Mm-hmm.
And I could say Oscar. And then it could be, you know what? My thing to say is going to be Charles.
Okay.
I do wonder how Lando is going to behave next week. I wonder if he's going to take this situation and come fighting hard, or is it going to bother him and he go further down the points next week?
Well, hopefully he doesn't second guess himself again, right? Because that's where it's going to mess him up, right? If he second guesses himself.
So I'm going to look to see how his resolve is coming up in 2 weeks.
Right.
So
yeah. Okay. All right. Well, having said that, we're going to see when we check out the Grand Prix in Austria. Until then, everyone, please remember to like, share, and subscribe and hit the notification bell. And we'll see you at the next race in Austria. Have a good evening.